Yes, welcome to this webinar on protecting your Microsoft 365 data with Synology Active Backup. I'm James, and I'm a business development analyst on the solutions team here at Synology UK, with a focus on backup and more specifically, cloud backup. Now, there's a couple of things that we're going to kind of run through today. So first off, we're going to take a look at why do we actually need cloud backup? We're then going to take a look at the Synology Active Backup suite, so the Synology solution to this cloud backup problem. And then finally, we're also going to take a look at how we can actually utilize that Synology Active Backup to build an effective backup solution for our environment. So yeah, I guess let's kind of start right at the beginning. Well, why do we actually need to back up our cloud data? Isn't the cloud already protected? Well, yes, in a way. So the clouds are normally built on what's known as a high availability platform. So that gives a good redundancy or resiliency, but is not an effective form of backup. As it doesn't really kind of offer any backups in terms of any attacks like ransomware, for example. Now, speaking of, it was actually after a recent study found that a third of UK businesses experience cyber attacks at least once a week. And actually, this is backed up by Microsoft's own findings. Specifically, the education industry gets attacked vastly more than any other industry out there. What's more, there are kind of other bits and pieces to consider as why you actually need a backup. So obviously we've got accidental deletion. So, if you've turned off the recycle bin and you delete something, well, yeah, clouds usually have a 30-day retention period. But if you don't know that it's missing until after that, well, you've got no way of recovering that data. Obviously, as I mentioned, we have ransomware attacks, and actually these have become extremely prevalent over the COVID period, with obviously a lot of attacks happening to those cloud environments. And then we've also actually got retention obligations. So, for example, education industry organizations, they have a governmental regulation that they need to keep their data for so long after that student has left their school. What's more, actually within Microsoft's own services agreement, they actually say that their services, or that they strongly advise to back up your Microsoft 365 cloud, as they aren't responsible for actually protecting that data. So yeah, that's kind of why we need to back up our data. Sorry if I've worried you a bit, but don't worry, there is a solution, and that is kind of where Synology kind of kicks in. So here at Synology, we have our Active Backup suite of packages that we've been slowly building and adding features to. And we now have 3 very feature-rich packages. So we have Active Backup for Business, which I've actually covered in another previous webinar. So if you'd like if you'd like to learn more about that, please do get in touch. I can help provide you with the link to that webinar. That covers our on-site solutions or our on-site systems. And then we've also got our other 2 packages. So Active Backup for Microsoft 365, which we're focusing on today. That's for your Microsoft 365 environment. And also Active Backup for Google Workspace, which covers the Google Workspace as well. And both of these packages work in a very, very similar method. Now, this is a case study that we helped put together last year. And they have 18,000 students in their we actually get asked quite often, well, what is the limits of those devices? And well, quite often the response is actually more than you require. So, for example, I was actually asked the other week, if a Synology SA3600 could handle the 3,000 Microsoft accounts that they had needing to be backed up. And well, if either you're in the same situation or you're dealing with someone who is, well, you kind of need to look no further than the case study that we have with Tampere Vocational College. Now, they're a college based in Tampere, which is the second largest city in Finland, and they have about 18,000 students that attend each year, and they have about 1,000 staff members as well. Now, all of this is on a Microsoft 365 cloud environment, and they actually have 60, 70,000 email inboxes as well to deal with. So they're needing something that had greater flexibility. Obviously, this is why they kind of moved to the cloud, the transition to homeschooling and home learning. Then they've also got retention obligations. So being an education customer, they're regulated that they need to maintain their students' data for a certain period of time. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, well, cloud does not mean backup. And so they needed to fill in their gaps in their data retention policy as well. So yeah, they looked towards Synology to help provide them with an on-premises solution that obviously would help them satisfy their retention goals. Or they also needed to reduce their IT efforts, so having spent less time actually managing the backups. And then they also needed to kind of actually save some money on the subscriptions as well. So yeah, from a Synology side, obviously we're looking at a system that can do 20,000 accounts. But actually, we've had a couple of solutions that have gone further than that. So yeah, we've had systems for 60,000 accounts, and we actually know that there is a system out there that is utilizing 200,000 accounts, all being backed up to the same solution. Now, yeah, to kind of put in a bit of a comparison to another solution that's out there on the market. Well, the Synology on-premises solution is actually £10,000 roughly. But if we took the same solution but put it to a 1-year subscription-based system through one of our cloud competitors, it's a lot more money. And if you don't believe me, I do have the screenshots to back this up as well. So yeah, we kind of discussed what actually goes into the Synology solution, and how far you can take that Synology solution. But how do we actually utilize that ourselves, and how do we actually maintain our backup environment? Well, there's actually a couple of things that you need to kind of think about before you even get to that stage. So obviously to put together a system for backup specifically, there are a couple of points that we need to consider. So first off, we have the amount of data. So that is actually not only the amount of data capacity that you'll need, but actually also the number of accounts, the number of inboxes, and the number of other entities that you're actually looking to back up. Because actually we've discovered that the amount of accounts is actually going to be the biggest factor rather than the total storage capacity that you have on your cloud environment. Obviously, the next kind of section of that is going to be the daily changed data. So obviously, the more amount of data and the more accounts and everything that you're having to back up every single day is going to be a hugely impactful thing to consider. We've also then got the retention requirements. So obviously that's going to be where the capacity on the device is going to start kicking in. So obviously if you need to store it for 7 years, you're going to be needing to take a bit more capacity than someone that's only looking to store it for about a year or two instead. And then finally, we kind of also need to think about any extra requirements. So obviously Synology NAS being more of an appliance server than just regular attached storage. You can do a heck of a lot more on NAS than you could do in the past. And so people are just using one system to do everything. So their file servers, their backup servers, their virtualization hosts, and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, we need to take into account some of those extra requirements that they might need. So actually kind of what units would fit into a couple of different scenarios. Well, for example, if you had something like a small school, so somewhere around the 200 accounts kind of range, then something like our DS920 Plus would be an absolute brilliant addition, because of its compact size and also cheap purchase cost as well. Now, jumping up a bit, sorry, is something like or what we would suggest for an academy trust. So these are multi-tenancy usually, and can have upwards of 800, 1,000 accounts per tenancy. And this is where something like our more performance-oriented machines, like our RSA 3400, might come in, because it can do multiple tenancies onto the same system. Well, actually, they all can do multiple tenancies, but this will be able to have a lot more grunt, and so we'll be able to back up those 3,000 plus accounts each day. And then looking even larger, well, something as Tampere, so a large university, so something 40,000 accounts or even more, then we'd be looking at something like our SA 3600, because it just has that greater performance ability to keep backing up those systems. So that's kind of taken a look at what goes into speccing out a backup solution, but how do we actually go about implementing our solution? So we need to actually take a way to look at the way that we utilize our Microsoft 365 environment and how we can back it up to an on-premises device.
Now, jumping onto the NAS, what we need to do is we need to install the package onto our NAS. So we'll open up Package Center and find Active Backup for Microsoft 365. We'll just click install just as we would any other app, and this will now download and install onto our NAS. Now, previously, when we were doing the creating the Active Backup tasks, what we'd need to do is we need to open up PowerShell and run through a series of commands, but that is completely gone now, so it's simplifying that installation process. So now that it's all running, we'll click open and get the backup task set up. So actually, yes, just whilst we'll do this, we'll quickly activate it. So we'll just link it to our Synology account. So we'll just click agree to the privacy statement and click next. And this will now kind of connect into our Synology account for us. And once that's done, it's just going to approve for us. And there we go. So now it's all activated. Now we can create the backup task. So we want to create a new backup task, and we'll choose Microsoft over Microsoft via 21 VNet, which is obviously for China. We'll just put in a certificate a password as well, and we'll just confirm that too. And then once we've done that, we'll click next, and this will now connect into our Microsoft account. So choosing our admin account, we'll just grant permission on Microsoft Azure for the Active Backup package, and we'll accept that. And once we're happy, we'll agree to it as well. This is now going to connect into that Microsoft Azure application, and will allow us to actually start backing up the data. What we'll do now, we'll just create our task name. So here we'll give it something nice and simple. So task_1. And we'll also choose the backup destination where we want to save this backup into. And actually here we'll also enable the portal, which we'll come onto in a bit. Once we're happy with that, we'll just choose everything that we want to back up. So obviously we want to back up everything, and we'll just give it a nice schedule, make sure it doesn't conflict with anything else happening at any time. So 5:30 in the morning sounds good. And actually we'll just set a retention policy of about 30 versions. And again, we'll come on to some more in-depth retentions in a bit as well. Now all it's going to do is going to connect in and actually start creating that backup task and actually start backing up that data onto our system. And there we go. Now it's all queued. It's going to start backing up, and we can now move on. It's
Now, obviously the backing up is actually only kind of one half of the equation. We actually need to be able to recover our files and our folders as well. And so, now let's kind of take a look at how we can utilize the restoration portal to actually do that either with our own data or with some of our either staff or our students' data as well. Now, this is actually kind of slightly different to how we've done it previously, because we've actually had a really cool new feature update in this, and I'm going to kind of utilize that now as well. So here we are, obviously in the Microsoft OneNote environment. and I actually kind of want to look at some really cool photos of myself. So here we are. We're just going to find them, and because I want to keep them, I'm just going to download them, and I've just deleted them instead by accident. Not to worry, this is why we have a backup. So let's jump back onto the NAS, and if we open up the Microsoft 365 portal, we can then go and do a bit of a restoration here. So we'll go and find our account. So I'm just going to put a little search in here for it, so I don't have to look through the whole list. And we'll click OK. And now we can have a look and make sure we're in the right version. So obviously it's the latest version that we've got. And we'll find our folder, so James's photos. And here we go. Here's our photo here that we want to restore. So I'm just going to select it, and we can either export it locally, but here I'm actually going to restore it. Now, previously this would restore into a new folder, but I'm actually going to restore it into the exact original folder where it used to be. So we'll click OK, and yeah, there we go. It's already restored. Now, jumping back into OneDrive, we can see that it's not quite arrived just yet. So let's just refresh it quickly, and there we go. Boom, sorted. Now we can open this, and we can see that there we go. There's a really cool photo of me sailing at one of the recent events I've been to, and yeah, it's as simple as that to restore the photos or files. Now, obviously, this is a brilliant way to back up from the Microsoft 365 cloud to our on-premises NAS. But that doesn't actually protect us from absolutely everything. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of the 3-2-1 rule of data protection. So that means having 3 copies of your data and at least 2 different methods or variants, and at least 1 physical location. So obviously we've got pretty much that sorted. So we've got 2 different versions of our data in at least 1 physical location. But we're actually missing our 3rd copy, and so this is where a secondary backup really comes into its own. Now, what I actually love to use in this case is actually snapshot replication. Now, this actually allows you to not only protect the data but also the whole task itself. So it actually means you can there's some great features that we can utilize going forwards. Now, of course, you can take snapshots every 5 minutes if you need. Or you can have that customizable retention policy, and it allows you to make sure that backup suits exactly what you're looking to achieve. Now here, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to utilize so the old NAS that we were using to back up our 365 data is actually going to become now our secondary NAS. So we see this quite often where someone is looking for a bit of an upgrade, and so what they do is they purchase a new NAS, and that becomes their primary NAS, but then they still have their old NAS as their secondary, and so that means that you can still have that full 3-2-1, and means you're not just kind of getting rid of a perfectly good NAS. So yeah, obviously we need to set up that snapshot replication task. So here we are on our primary NAS that we've got set up. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump into File Station just to make sure that we know where the file folder is that we're looking to back up. Now we can obviously, we can update snapshot replication, and we're going to set up a remote task. Now clicking the drop down means we get a list of all the NAS that we have on our network, and so we're just going to select the target NAS and put in our login credentials. Now, obviously, we want to make sure we're storing it in the right location, so we'll select volume 1, and we know that we want to back up the Active Backup for Business folder, so that's what we'll select. We're going to send this over the network as well, so that simplifies it even further. And then we're just going to make sure our retention policy mimics that of the primary backup, so we'll just keep the latest 7 days. And yeah, well, once we're happy with all of our settings, we'll click Done. And this will now start sending that snapshot onto that secondary NAS. Obviously, there are other options that we can kind of go from here if we want to. We can obviously do those snapshots to multiple NAS that we have on the network, or we can take a look at trying to do a tertiary level of backup, so from that secondary NAS onto a 3rd. But I think here we'll just leave it as is, as we're following that full 3-2-1 backup. So yeah, this is actually a really good use case. So we've got our full 3-2-1 backups. We have our Microsoft 365 tenant backing up to our on-premises NAS in our office, and then we have our secondary backup, which is actually being stored in the other building. But yeah, this is actually this is a really good full disaster recovery case. Now, obviously, systems aren't immune to failure, whether it might have a bit of a problem, but actually what's more likely is if you need to take something down for maintenance. So for instance, you turn then power off to a building or to the servers for a prolonged period of time, and that system were to go down for whatever reason. Well, what we can actually do is we can switch over the backup task itself onto that secondary NAS. And then we can connect our Microsoft 365 cloud to that secondary NAS. And it means you're actually not losing any restore points. So it's a really cool feature built into snapshot replication. And yeah, it means you're still maintaining your backups, even if you don't quite have that full 3-2-1. Those keeping those backups is really essential. So yeah, here we are on the primary NAS that we've just set up the backup onto, and I'm just going to open up snapshot replication, and we'll click recovery, and we'll select our task and select switch over. And we'll just make sure that we're switching over onto the correct NAS, make sure it's all happy, and then we can check on that switch over status, and there we go, it's switched over. So now that it's actually replicating from the secondary NAS to the primary, we can now go onto the secondary, and we can actually make sure that we've got it there. So we can see that under recovery, look, there we go. We are actually now replicating to that primary NAS. And we're just going to relink the task as well back to that Microsoft 365. So what we'll do, we'll actually select relink an existing task, and we'll select the right task that we want. So we'll select that, and it's successfully relinked the task. So this is now going to just fulfill the backup database onto Active Backup from Microsoft 365, and yeah, it's as simple as that. We now have a backup running from our Microsoft 365 environment onto our secondary NAS, and our secondary NAS snapshotting to our primary NAS. So we've still got our 3-2-1, and if we needed to now, we can now unplug or do our maintenance on our primary NAS, and then once we're all sorted, we just need to do everything again and switch over back onto the primary NAS, and then we'll be able to relink that task again as well. So yeah, we've kind of taken a look at a bit of everything within the Microsoft 365 package. So obviously we've covered why you actually need a cloud backup. So obviously because the Microsoft clouds and the Google clouds aren't a backup themselves. It might be for retention obligations. It might be to protect against ransomware attacks. Just to name a few examples. We've then taken a look at actually what Synology offers. So the Synology ecosystem with regards to software. And then we've had a look at actually how to, or what goes into speccing out a solution, and then actually how to deploy that backup solution as well. Now, if anyone has any questions on any of these points, please do get in touch or put in the Q&A, and I'll be more than happy to help answer them. All that's left for me to say is please do go and check out our hybrid cloud bundles that we're offering. So this allows you to get a NAS, whether it be desktop, rack mount, as on screen now, in a numerous different capacity types, all bundled with a cloud storage amount as well. Now this is actually really interesting because Synology is the first brand that is able to release this. Due to the fact that we have our own cloud brand integrated into the Synology ecosystem already. And secondly to that, we've also going to be running some different things this year. Finally, we're able to go out and meet some people face to face. So be sure to keep an eye on our pages for our workshops that we're going to be running later this year in London and Manchester. Also, if you want to come and meet us in person, then do come and have a chat with us at the Media and Production Technology Show in May. And also, if you'd like to learn more about the actual implementations of the Microsoft 365 backup solution, please do go and watch our expert talk with Artu from Tampere College, and we'll send the link out to you in the follow-up afterwards. So yes, thank you all very much for watching, and I will now go and answer all of your questions.